All right, Bruce, let's go to work. Okay. I want to talk. What else am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about what everybody's talking about. Fake news and Donald Trump's press conference and the whole BuzzFeed, CNN hullabaloo. You probably heard about it by now. Trump called out a CNN reporter at his press conference yesterday. His name, I think the reporter's Jim Acosta, and he said he wouldn't take a question from him. The guy was kept hammering and hammering, you know, will you take a question? You're making all these allegations. I think we deserve a right to ask a question. You know, because Trump was talking about the fake BuzzFeed story that may have been, it looks like it may have been started by some shit poster on 4chan, which would be hilarious. But no word on that yet. But I mean, I'm inclined to believe, just based on the content of the story in the BuzzFeed piece, the dossier as they call it, I'm inclined to believe that it probably was started by somebody on 4chan, because the contents of it read like something somebody on 4chan would post, or Reddit. But anyway, so it's Jim Acosta, I guess, because he came out and started attacking BuzzFeed and in turn CNN, because let's face it, CNN ran with it. You know, this guy got all upset, and Trump called him fake news. Said he wouldn't call on him. Said he was being rude because he'd already motioned to another reporter to ask a question. It was just funny, and the funny thing is that, you know, people in the press gallery started clapping, which is, you know, you would think that journalists would stand in solidarity, but they started clapping, probably because they were irritated with the Jim Acosta guy, because he just wouldn't let up. He wouldn't stop talking. He wouldn't stop asking the same thing over and over again. Will you please take a question? I think you owe it to us because you're making these allegations. Please take a question. No, that's not how it works. He doesn't owe you anything. And then Spicer came out and said he's going to, if he behaves like that again, he's going to have him taken out of the press conference. And then there was, you know, there's speculation, of course, on social media about whether or not BuzzFeed and CNN would have their White House credentials pulled. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'd be hilarious if they did. Could you imagine the knock in the credibility of CNN to have their White House press credentials pulled? They basically, I mean, CNN's not worth the pixels on the screen that they're broadcast on. They're terrible. But anyway, Philip DeFranco made a point on his video yesterday about how CNN, you can't really blame CNN. All they were doing was talking about it. I'm like, no, you can blame CNN because of the power that CNN holds, right? They're on every screen in every airport. They're in barbershops. They're, you know, any restaurant diner that has a TV, CNN's probably on. And they hold so much power over, you know, public opinion and public perception that for them to give, you know, an unverified story that they knew was unverified, BuzzFeed knew it was unverified, and they ran with it anyway. I mean, that's the biggest controversy, that BuzzFeed knew that this story, this dossier was unverified, and they said, we know it's unverified, but we feel that we should put it out there, and this is going to be 2017 journalism. So anything that comes across their desk, they're just going to put out there. So basically, BuzzFeed has said they're going to be the Weekly World News or the National Enquirer. They're not going to worry about sources. As long as somebody said it somewhere, it's worth printing. It's worth putting out on their website. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, back to CNN. CNN, with their power, they gave this story legs, and they didn't need to. Nobody else was even registering this stuff because it looked incredible. It didn't look real, right? It looked fake. 15-year-old kids on 4chan know it's fake. Not because it came from 4chan, but because anybody reading it has enough media savvy to know when they're reading bullshit. And I mean, BuzzFeed knew it was bullshit. Originally, I made a post on my Facebook page about how, this is a real, what does it say about journalism in America when, they're so credulous that they would believe something so stupid? Well, I like to take it back because now I realize that BuzzFeed, they didn't believe it, but they decided to put it out there anyway, which means they engaged in scurrilous scandal ruck-making after the guy's been elected. All they wanted to do was undermine his press conference, to sully his press conference with this fake story that they knew was fake, and try and derail it somehow. And all it did was derail them. All it did was make them look like schmucks, and made CNN look like the schmucks they are too. Now, my issue with CNN is, like I said, they gave this story legs when they didn't have to. They gave it validity. And yeah, okay, you could say, well, they were talking about the merits of the story. Well, if it doesn't have any merits, why are you giving it airtime? And they know this. The marketing people at CNN know this as well, and so do the talking heads there. People don't watch CNN. They see CNN, right? No one sits and watches CNN for 30 minutes to actively catch up on the day's news. I mean, some people probably do, but very few people. That's not how they consume the media that comes off of CNN. How they see it is for 15 minutes while they're waiting for, a barber chair to open up. And they're not paying attention. They're paying attention to their phone, or they're only hearing it because they're doing something else. And CNN's on there. And in order to get context, they have to look at the chyron, right? So they go, and that's how people look at, what are they talking about? I came into this middle story. What does the chyron say? Oh, chyron says, Trump engaged in golden showers with prostitutes in Moscow. I mean, it didn't say that, but if the chyron is inflammatory, or if the chyron is so controversial, that's all the people will take away from it. They'll go, okay, this is the controversy. We're talking about Trump. What is this all about? And they'll mention BuzzFeed articles. So then people will go and look at the BuzzFeed, and they won't give it a second thought. They'll go, oh, it was on, so CNN cited this BuzzFeed story. CNN's a reputable news source. There must be something to this. They're not watching and looking at the context in which CNN is reporting on this. The fact that CNN is saying, well, the merits of this case are unverified, and why would BuzzFeed put this out there? Why are you talking about it? If you want to do a segment on fake news, that's fine, but the way in which you do it lend credibility to the story on BuzzFeed. Anyway, that's my take on it, and I think that CNN's aware of how they're perceived. CNN's aware of how their media is consumed, and they kind of have a responsibility, especially if they're going to be, the prime or the main sort of provider of information to people watching news in America. And that's why, I think more and more people who actually watch and analyze what's coming off of CNN, that's why they have such a low credibility rating. That's why nobody trusts them. And Kellyanne, I wish I'd watched the story, the piece between, or the segment with Kellyanne Conway talking to Anderson Cooper, because apparently he tore him a new one with regards to his network. I want to see it. I'll have to watch it later, but the thing is, CNN has this kind of power, and they spent the last few months of the election basically stumping and campaigning for Hillary Clinton, full well knowing of their reach, and their power to sway public opinion. And then Hillary still lost. So anyway, I just think I think this sort of further drives my point home that broadcast media is not broadcast news journalism. and broadcast media are not going to have the power over people the way they do right now by the end of 2017. And then this morning, so pissed off, the wife turned on BT this morning because we like to catch the news and weather. Not really the news, because they don't really report news. We like to get the weather and the traffic report, because she goes all the way in, to the other side of Toronto. So she needs to know what the traffic's like. I work and live in my hometown, so I don't really need to know traffic so much. But anyway, Kevin Frankish, starts talking about the whole issue at Trump's press conference yesterday, and he misrepresented everything that happened. And that I know just from his coverage of the election and his perception, how he perceives Donald Trump during the election cycle. He came out one time and he said something about, we're trying to warn you people that Donald Trump is dangerous. Like, here's a news presenter, and his bias is so clear, it's almost laughable. And then it shone through this morning in his coverage of yesterday's event. I can't remember exactly what he said, but the way in which it was presented, the weasel words that he used, and the omission of certain details really was just, hey guys, guess what's going on with Trump again? Here's another scandal. That's basically the tone of the entire thing, right? He should stop covering news, because he's not a news merchant. He's a clown who sits next to a beautiful woman in the morning and they talk about Tim Hortons coffee, and the only value of that show at all is in traffic reports and weather reports, and that's it. And I really hate watching it. But anyway, I tweeted to him. I said, I tweeted to Kevin Frankish at BT Toronto. I said, why are you such a liar? Why do you misrepresent everything? And then I put hashtag fake news. And he responded, which is kind of funny. He responded with, I'm sure you have some proof of your slander and libel. I'm like, okay, well, which is it? So I tweeted back, which is it, slander or libel? I would expect a journalist like you to know the difference. He hasn't responded back. But anyway, he didn't like that I called him a liar and a misrepresenter. And he didn't like that I put fake news next to the BT Toronto Twitter channel. But whatever, I don't care. I don't like the guy, and it's not that I don't like the guy's politics. I don't like him. I think he's a feat, and I think he's a clown, and I think he's a loser on that show. But I'm starting to sound like Donald Trump. Anyway, I really think that this whole controversy with BuzzFeed and CNN, I think it's just further proof to my point earlier on another video that broadcast media is it's done. I mean, BuzzFeed isn't broadcast media; they're a website, but they were never good. They're going to be done by 2017. They're going to go the way of Gawker. And CNN, I would think it would be hilarious if they lost their press credentials. At least Jim Acosta. I mean, I can see him acting up again, and if he acts up again in a press conference, like at a White House press briefing, if he decides to, be belligerent, I think they would be well within their rights to revoke his press credentials. Anyway, that's my thought on it, and yeah, I'm back at work, so thanks, and talk to you later.